What's up, you guys? My friends keep making fun of me for saying hello, so that's your greeting for today. This week's tutorial is for hair physics. And if you didn't catch the last tutorial, it was a pretty scuffed head angles tutorial. I'm very sorry. I'll try to be more clear in this one. It was a bit of a mess last time, but I'm hoping this will be pretty straight to the point and easy to digest, maybe? So let's just get right into it. Okay, so before we get started on anything, let me just show what I've done. I fixed up my angles a little bit. I also added my hair shadows that I completely forgot about in the last video. I also added in my little fangs for my mouth, as you can see here. I also did the fangs for my open mouth and everything, since I have inside mouths and like skin mouth thingies. So yeah, I also fixed up my mouth for my angles. As you can see, my tongue and back teeth, they go back into my mouth like that. It's for those angles. And then when you tilt down, you see more of the tongue. You tilt up, you see less. So those are the updates I've done. So obviously, there's a lot of ways to rig hair. Everyone does it differently. There's also different ways to rig different types of hair. I'll be going over my favorite techniques, specifically for this type of hair. You can take these techniques and then fix them to how your hair is. So first of all, let me just show you my hair parameter folder. I have a parameter folder just for hair. Here I have hair X and then hair Y. My hair X is my physics for when I turn left and right, and my hair Y is for my physics when I look up and down, which is kind of my favorite because it always looks nice and floofy. So you can just make those parameters here. For example, here's my X1. These are how I named these, X1, X2, X3. It's just simpler and easier. I don't do anything with the ID. And then my minimums, -30, maximum 30, default 0. And then you can make as many as you want, honestly. If you have shorter hair, I wouldn't use too much. But if you have long hair and you want to make that look smooth, you're going to want more. However, if you're on the free version, you're going to be pretty limited. So analyze how many warps you've got left, and to your best discretion, use them sparingly. But the more parameters you have for your hair, the smoother it's gonna look, which usually means it's gonna look nicer. Also depends on the type of look you're going for, so all up to you. Usually I like to start with just 4, and if my hair is longer or anything, I will add more. My hair is pretty short here, honestly, so I think 4 is fine. But you can always add another when you need to, so once you've got all your parameters down, let's go into our hair. I'm gonna start with my front hair. I'm just gonna open up all of those layers here that are already warped to angle X, Y's and stuff. Open all these and see everything better. So one method people like to use to get really smooth looking hair is skinning. I do not ever use skinning for hair, so I will not be going over skinning in this video. I will be going over skinning in a different video. As a quick explanation, skinning uses a lot of rotation deformers, which get messed up with our angle XY warps. So I'm not using them for hair ever. So yeah, I'll show it in a different video. I'm gonna start with my little front hair here. And there are specific ways people like to do their mesh for their hair. I used to have a preset mesh I made specifically for hair. I don't have it right now because I'm on a new PC, but honestly, I'm lazy, so I'm just gonna use a heavy deformation. You can mesh it to however you would like if you know what you're doing. But I'm just gonna do heavy, and if it's not what I want, I'll change it. So this first technique I'm gonna show you, I'm specifically aiming this towards people who are maybe a little too lazy, or if you're on the free version, because this will use no warps, so you're saving more warps that you could be using for other things. But it won't make your hair as impressive, because you can only use a max of 2 parameters. So I'll show it as a little intro to the hair physics. You can also use this technique on other parts of like your clothes or whatever you'd like to use. Usually I don't like to put physics on directly the layer I'm using because I like to use the mesh to specifically tweak it for specific angles and such. But up to you. So for rigging directly on the hair, we're gonna add path deformers. So first I like to put a path deformer at the top little tip and then a little under that. And then I'll put the next one all the way at the edge of my strand. And the way you separate your hair can really affect how nice your hair movement could look. If you see in my separation guide, I have all of my hairs in like straight strands basically. So taking my path deformer, I'm going to put 3 keyforms on my X1 and go all the way over to the right, positive 30. My hair is gonna go in that same direction, and then negative 30, the opposite direction. So this just makes it sway. But if it's just swaying like this, it's gonna be pretty choppy, and there's not much movement because it only has one little movement. So we're gonna add 3 keyforms to X2. And this is where I go back into my path deformer, and I have to put one right in the middle of these 2 dots here. By the way, if you didn't know, while you're on the path deformer, if you want to test if you have your dots in the right place, you can hold down Control and then take one of the dots and test it here, and then just Control Z to put that back in place. Now I'm gonna go over to positive 30 on X2 and drag this way. Negative 30, drag it the other way. Now you can go to negative 30 for X1 and then go to negative 30 for X2, and then manually do this like we did for the brows. Or you can just connect everything and synthesize the corners. And then you'll have this awkward waving movement. It's only a little awkward because we're using the synthesized corners. But you can also use it as a guideline. If I go to the corner here, it's going out a little too much. You can probably see it. It's not looking very smooth. So we're just going to shrink that back in. That's that. So usually for the hair like this, I would just manually do all of the swaying like here at each keyform. I always go back and forth to see if it looks right. Honestly, it's so janked up, I'm gonna just go back to before I synthesize the corners. And then I can combine those, and look, it's looking nice and swaying-ish. So let's test it out in the physics really quick. You open up your physics. Obviously, I already have my preset in for my hair X, so you would just need to add a new physics group here. Name it like hair X or something. Input preset, you can honestly just put head. And then physics model, you can use one of the hair ones. I usually like to use triple or double just as a base. Since we only have 2 parameters here, we can just use double. And then you can put those in. So these are my physics settings for my hair X. You can copy these if you'd like. I do have a pendulum for each of my parameters here. And everything looks pretty static because I edit these depending on the model I'm using. And then here are my outputs. You're going to want to press add and add all of your hair X parameters here. And then once you have your output, your input, and your physics pendulum set in, you can use whatever input you used to test the hair. So mine are X and Y and Z. I'm just gonna look back and forth, and it's swaying. Now if you use one of the preset pendulums for like the double or triple, I think your hair will be a lot swayier than mine, but you can play around with that. If your hair is not moving a lot, you can see if you go over to your hair X's, you move back and forth, and your keyforms aren't going back and forth as strongly as they should be. You probably need to set your output higher because our ranges are from negative 30 to 30 instead of negative 1 to 1. So you're going to want to increase your scale. You can also just hit increase output, and I think that should automatically set everything like at 100 output. So you can play around with that, and then your hair should be working right. But that's just a quick little intro for this type of hair. If you're on the free version, you're basically going to want to do that to the rest of your hair. Or if you're lazy, you can do that to the rest of your hair. I'm gonna take all these away and do the method I like, which is using a ton of warps. I'm also gonna delete these path deformers. Okay, so taking our hair that we want to warp and add physics to, we go over and give it a warp. And I'm just gonna name this X1 and then create. Now there's a lot of different ways to make the physics look, and it all depends on the kind of look you're going for. I'm gonna show a couple techniques. So for this first one, I'm gonna use like a wavier technique. I'm gonna take away all these. And then you're gonna want a lot of gray dots here. So usually I would start with 10 by 10 conversion divisions on all of these and add more if my strand's really big or less if my strand's kind of tiny, because we want the hair to warp nicely. So we're gonna want to add more detailed little dots. So let's add 3 keyforms to X1 and let's turn this over to positive 30. I'm gonna take my brush tool. I'm gonna grab like right here and just push it this way. And then I'm gonna take the other side and push it the other way. And then I'm gonna add more to my Bezier division numbers. So I can take these and smooth it out. And then I'm gonna go back to my hair, add another warp for X2, create that. add 3 keyforms on X2 now. And I'm gonna move my keyform for X1 over to the side here so you can see what it looks like there. And then off of that, I'm gonna build my X2. And I'm gonna grab this chunk of hair here that's against the face and bring it out with the X1. Smooth that out. Go to the other side, do the same thing. Smooth that out. Now if I combine the X1 and X2, I can see it has this wavy effect. Now I'm gonna add another warp deformer. X3. 3 keyforms X3. And I'm gonna grab 2 and I'm gonna push out the last of my hair, the little tip here. Make it go out, smooth that out. Same thing on this side. And then you test it here to see how that looks. This corner here is not moving as much. So I'm gonna squeeze it in a little bit. Squish it out a little bit. Really depends on the look you're going for. Smooth everything out. And then we can combine X2 and X3 to see how that looks. And it's pretty wavy. Now I have no idea what this is gonna look like with the actual physics. So let's go back into the physics settings. Let's zoom in here. I already have my X3 and everything plugged in. So you should too. And then let's test out what this looks like. It's a little wavy. Honestly, I use this technique for really long hair. It looks a little better there. For the short hair, it's kind of awkward, but it's a technique you could use. Then I'm just gonna leave that there and then show other techniques on these other strands. Now I'm gonna take this little strand of hair here. Let's add an X1 keyforms. I'm gonna add more conversion divisions. Now we're gonna try a different technique with this one. I'm gonna take this selection brush and I'm gonna grab most of this up to almost the root. Then I'm just gonna angle this and position it to where I think it looks good, like this. So I want it swaying this way instead of doing a wavy technique. And with that same box, I'm gonna grab that and twist it the other way. Push that out. Make sure it looks smooth here. Now I'm just gonna do the same thing we did for the other one. Add X2 or deformer. Keyforms X2. Now we're gonna grab a little less than we grabbed there. Like around here. And do the same thing. Just rotate what we have. Push it in. Push it out for the other keyform. This part's a little awkward here, so I'm gonna take the brush tool to push this part in to make it a little smoother. Add an X3. Do the same thing. And then I have extra room to put in X4, so I'm gonna put in X4 too. Just gonna grab the little tip left that we have. And since that's all done, let's test it out in the physics settings. And it's looking a little nicer than our little wavy thing here because it suits this hair type a little better. Going back and forth. My physics aren't really strong, to be honest, so you can make it crazier if you want. You can add more shaking to everything like this, and then it'll go back and forth a lot more. But if you add too much shaking, then it's gonna be kind of janky. And also, if you right-click on one of the columns in the physics settings, you can edit all the values in that one column, and it will change all the numbers to the same number. And then depending on which part your parameter is at of the hair, you're probably going to want to change the duration and everything. You just have to take into account what kind of hair physics you're into. And then you can also test the physics here and see it's kind of janky over here. It's probably my tip of the hair that I didn't smooth out where I rotate it from. So lots of things to keep in mind. This is where you want to go back and forth in the physics settings to see if it looks right. Let's move on to the next one, which is the one I usually use. Taking my other fringe, I'm going to add X1. Add 3 keyframes, then add more conversion divisions. Now, this is my favorite technique to use. I use all the time, and that's by using temporary deformers. So obviously, using the path deformer on the hair earlier for my little demonstration, it feels a lot easier and more intuitive to use than these warps that you move around. And we can't really use path deformers on warps like this, obviously. And that's where temporary warp deformers come in. So if you go over to modeling, you can find the temporary deform tools here, which are basically all the warp tools you can use now. but you can use them temporarily, if this makes sense. You click on temporary path deformation. You can now add path deformers to your hair. So I'm gonna put it here and just mimic what I would do if I was warping directly on the hair. And then I can move it back and forth, and it's nice and super smooth. Disclaimers though, you can only use this if you're on the right keyform. If you go back to like this keyform, you can't use these. You have to use it on the right keyform that you're on, but you can just warp it here and then go back to this keyform. If you hit temporary deform tool, temporary path deformation again, you can just do the same thing on the other side and push it over. And look, it looks nice and smooth when you go back and forth. And check out of that. Since I use this so much, I do have it tied to a keybind. If you want to use it a lot too and put on a keybind, you just go to File, Settings, Keyboard Shortcuts, go to Modeling, and then find the temporary deform tool here, and then the path deformation, and then put whatever keyform you like. I like to use Control plus numpad 7. I don't know why, it's just easier for me, so depends on what you want to use. So my workflow is usually I would select the hair, add the warp deformer, keyforms, pick one, and then I'll use my keybind. And then since I already did X1, I'll add one here, and then one at the end. And then it's the same thing on the other side. And then check out of that. When I switch to the other side with the temporary path deformer, I do hit my keybind, and then it's just a lot more easier for me like that. Hope that makes sense. I explained it a little fast, but you guys got it, right? Now, there are some awkward moments with the temporary path deformer tool you might come into. Depends on how your warp is with your hair. Usually you want your warp to wrap around your hair strand really nicely, because if it's too wide, it will mess up with the temporary path deformer tool. So that's something to keep in mind. General rules I use for my temporary path deformer is, of course, a tight warp around my hair. I always go outside of my warp, and then you can also, if you put down a dot that you want to move, you didn't put in the right spot, you can hit down Control and click and drag it like this, and then just add another one, and then just do the same thing. If you don't want too much of this to move while you're moving just this tiny spot, you're gonna want to put more path deformers here to kind of block it from affecting the others too much. But yeah, you just need to play around with how it works, and then the more you understand it, the easier you can use it, which of course goes for all the other tools. And then let me just do the last X4 here. And then let's test this out in the physics settings. I think my shaking is a little too much on the little ends here, so I'm gonna edit those. But yeah, that's the technique I use the most and I like the most. Of course, if you have like fluffy hair, there are other techniques for that. But generally, you would use like the same kind of techniques I've used, but in a different way, if that makes sense. And then you also don't have to use the same physics for all the hair. There are a lot of people who do separate physics groups for hair, like they'll do a separate physics group for the bangs, a separate physics group for ponytails, etc, etc. All up to you. I'm lazy, so I just use one and clump them all together. So yeah, that's a little intro to all tools. There are more techniques to doing hair physics, but that's just the 3 I'll show you. Or the 4, I guess. The path deformer right on the layer, and then the wavier technique, and then the technique by grabbing dots and rotating them, and then using temporary path deformers. You can also play around with the other temporary deformers and see what you like. So that's all the hair techniques I'll show in this video. I might show more in a different video, but for now, I think that'll set a lot of you off to a good foot. So I'm basically just going to do that for the rest of the hair. I will set the X1 to 4 for everything on my head. And work on that while I work on mine. I'm also going to reset all these back to normal so I can do the same technique on all the hair. Okay, I rigged in all my exits. I kind of hate my pigtails, so I'm probably gonna redo them later. But you'll probably see some things poking out as your hair moves around. But especially my head pokes out, as you can see here. I'm gonna go into my face line and face skin and just concave my head. But yeah, it's looking pretty decent, I guess. Could use a lot of touch up. Could fix up the physics a bit. But generally, yeah. You can see that my tied back hair doesn't really move because it's all tied back. There's no physics to add to it, especially to my hair that's tucked in here. That's supposed to be tucked into my ears. That's it's not moving either because it doesn't really need to. So it's up to your discretion on what you're wanting to move. Okay, I totally didn't just fix all of my angles again, but let's move on to hair Y. So hair Y is going to be how your hair moves when you look up and down. Like I said, I love doing this one. So let's just go and do my front hair again. I'm gonna demonstrate hair Y with this fringe over here. Now I know one of the first techniques I showed was the little wavy hair movement. It's not particularly good for my type of hair, for hair X, for moving left and right, in my opinion. But for hair Y, I think it looks perfect. So I'm going to actually do that. Just taking my hair, I'm going to add a Y1 deformer onto it. And then I'm going to add 3 keyforms to hair Y. Now for hair Y, it's a little tricky because the physics makes it kind of weird. But usually I like to rig on positive 30 how my hair looks when I'm gonna go down, and then negative 30 is what my hair looks like when I'm gonna go up. And if it looks weird for my specific rig, you can just invert how it works. So negative 30 would be the opposite of what you set it to. This will make sense later, but for now, positive 30 is what my hair is gonna be when I look down. So if you're thinking of like a parachute, sort of, or just like any basic physics with hair, if you like toss your head down real fast, or like you're skydiving, your hair is gonna fly upwards. So that's what I'm trying to do. I like to do like a jellyfish kind of swaying look, if that makes any sense. It'll probably make sense after I rig everything in. But I'm going to take a section and push it out a little like this. And then I do like to add more divisions down the middle, just so after I push it out with my brush tool, I can smooth it out by just selecting the little frame here. And then for the other side, I'm gonna just push it inwards towards my face and then smooth that out. And then for hair 2, I'm just gonna go down the line as usual. Use my Y1 as a guide, push this out, smooth this out. Same thing for the other side. I'm gonna do that for Y3 and 4. For my last bit of hair for hair Y, I like to actually use the temporary path deformer. Grab it and push it out instead of using the brush tool. And then let's just test this out. So you're gonna want to make your hair Y group. Here's mine. Again, just press add here, name whatever you want. My inputs are angle Y and body Y. Both are position. I have angle Y at 30 and body Y at 40. And then here are my physics settings. They're a little stronger than my hair X because I love hair Y so much, but I will probably edit it as we go. And then of course, output settings are my hair Y1 physics parameters. Remember that your input settings should be the default angle Y or the default body Y, and your outputs should be your new parameters. And once you have that done, we should be able to have hair Y movement. It's nice and springy, but maybe too springy. It needs to be smoothed out a lot over here. Especially my little hair here. I need to add more movement to it. But yeah, I like to use that wavier movement for the hair Y here because it looks better. Got that spring. Yeah, you can play around with the settings. I'm gonna turn these down a little bit. Actually, I think I like it without the body Y. I'm gonna delete body Y and put all of the effect on angle Y actually. I kind of like that better. It's a little too much going on, but... Just play around with the physics to see what you guys like. Probably be doing this for a bit every time I check back. This is a little better. I've been trying to make this part look more fluid, but I think for now it's good enough. It's like a little snake. There's a lot of different techniques you can use for angle Y too. One technique I really like is like for bangs, or I guess you can use it on any type of hair, but when you look down, it like fluffs up, like it widens, you know? Like a parachute. I would suggest looking at different models and see how they move and how their hair moves. And then the more you get to know live2d, the easier you can analyze other people's rigs and see what they did, and then figure out how to do that for yourself. That's what I have to do with hair. I like looking at other people's like hair rigs. It also helps you figure out what doesn't look good. There's some hair rigs out there that aren't as smooth, or they look a little choppy. And I do have some ways you could fix any choppiness that I'll explain later. For now, in this process, just try to get as smooth as you can. And then I'm gonna add the little touch-ups later. But yeah, I'm just gonna do the same thing I did for this piece of hair for everything else. So bear with me as I speed through this. Okay, I think I'm finished. We got our angle X hair moving like this. Then we have our angle Y. See how it poofs up like a parachute or jellyfish? I like the jellyfish move. Obviously, it could do a lot of touching up, but as always, I'm always doing that. If it doesn't look right to you, just keep practicing or try out different ways to move your hair to see what works best for your type or what you're into. Okay, so as a touch-up I like to do at the end of every time I'm done rigging hair is adding the extended interpolation. So I would go over to one of my parameters here, so with X1. You right-click on the keyform, you can click Select, and this will select everything that has X1 rigged onto it. And then we're gonna go to the menu here, and then hit Extended Interpolation, and you're gonna do Ellipse Interpolation. Now the default is 5 points. You can do more or less. If you do too much, I think it might lag for some of you. But honestly, I don't really need that much, so I will do 3 points and close out of that. And that will add the points here, as you can see. 3 points in between each keyframe. Now, it's kind of hard to explain how this works since my hair is all smooth already, basically. But if you're warping a warp deformer and you're rotating it, it's gonna have kind of a jagged rotation to it instead of a smooth rotation with a rotation deformer. Some of you might have instances of this where your hair looks choppy when it's swinging left and right. This might help with that, but since my hair is already pretty smooth, it's kind of hard to tell. Okay, I found a really good video on explaining this by Ryan at Pixel Verdes on Twitter. But as you can see, this is the jagged line I'm talking about with no extended interpolation. As you can see here, it's pretty jagged and a little choppy. And then when they switch over to ellipse, it turns that jagged line into a curve. And then all the little dots here are the interpolation points here. So the more points you have, like, the more curvier the curve is, I guess. So I hope this makes sense. But yeah, usually I'll go through all my parameters and do my extended interpolation on all those. And usually I like to do this for anything that needs to be pretty smooth. So I do this for a lot of the physics. I do this for angle XY. I'll do that right now. If I go over to my angles, combine my XY, select all those, and then add ellipse interpolation. Since the head should move around in a circle, it makes it smoother. It might be a little hard to tell if your movements are already smooth, but just something I like to add in to make it a lot smoother. Again, if your hair has choppy physics to it, this might help. But this is not mandatory. Extended interpolation and glue are like little add-ons to make your rig a little better. But that being said, don't use it too much. I think those are things you should use sparingly. But it's all up to you. That's just my personal preference. So let me just go through all my hair and add extended interpolation. And then let's test that out. Honestly, I don't know if you can tell, but it looks a little smoother. This is just, you know, a little extra thing. But yeah, that's the end of this tutorial. I hope it was clearer than the angle XY tutorial. I know some people had issues with some specific parts of the tutorial. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of slow to responding to questions, or sometimes I don't see your comment until like way later. But if you guys have any questions about this one, please leave them below. I think in the future, I want to stream rigging to help other people. Like maybe people submit their rigs and I'll like help figure out how to make it look better. Although I feel like probably most of you rig better than me by now. For the next tutorial, I honestly don't know what I'm gonna do. I think I'll do a really simple body XYZ. But if there's anything you guys want to learn, please let me know. After I finish rigging my model, I will be doing tutorials on how to add like expressions, hand toggles, hand tracking, stuff like that. So if there's anything specific you guys want to see, let me know. And I just want to say thank you for all the support lately again. I think we hit 7K a couple days ago. I tweeted about it on Twitter. If you guys don't follow me on Twitter, I'm actually working on a couple different videos that are not live2d rigging related that I hope you guys will enjoy. Maybe just a lot of other artist things I think you guys can relate to. And I hope it's okay, but I just wanted to shout out Yugiri Otome from Twitter for drawing fan art of me. I think this is like my actual first fan art and it's so cute. So thank you so much. Honestly, I don't have an art tag or anything because I don't really expect anyone to draw stuff of me, but I am now considering it. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out a schedule where I can post once a week and be a little more consistent. I will be honest, I've been pretty sick the past couple of weeks, so I've been a little slow on getting this video out, but please bear with me. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye!